Hello, welcome back if you are returning, welcome if you are new here. My name is Molly, and we are about to kick off a huge planting vlog. I've got 12 trays of seedlings that are hardened off and ready to get in the ground. I've got a ton of seeds that need direct seeding. My dahlia tubers are separated and ready to plant, and the potatoes we prepped last vlog are ready to go in the ground as well. So we've got a lot to get planted, and I'm going to start with the potatoes. These are just organic potatoes purchased from the grocery store. I got 3 different varieties. I stored them in a cabinet for a couple of days to let the eyes start sprouting, and then once those eyes started sprouting last week, we sliced the potatoes into chunks, making sure there was at least one eye on each slice. I set them aside and let them dry for a little bit so they weren't at risk for rotting once we put them in the ground, and now it's time to plant them. So I've got my bowl of potatoes, I've got a couple of stakes to label my rows, and I have my hoe here so that we can dig a couple of trenches. Once we have the trenches dug, I'm going to plant each individual potato about 8 to 10 inches apart. The more space you give them, the more room they have to grow, but we have limited bed space, so I'm going to try to cram in as much as possible. We have 3 different varieties here. I've got some mixed fingerling potatoes, some gold potatoes, and at the bottom here you can barely see them, I've got some russet potatoes. So I'm just going to take each of these, stick them in the trench with our little eyes facing up because that's the plant that's going to grow, and that's it. Just as simple as that. Once they're all in the row, I'll cover it up and they'll be good to go. As a reminder, this is the bed that we expanded a few weeks ago in the back behind the fence here. So I'm just kind of starting on the left edge, and I've roughed out where I'm going to plant everything else. But I spaced the trenches out maybe about 12 inches so the potatoes have room to grow underground, and when we dig them up, we're not like disrupting every single plant around it. When we expanded this bed, we composted everything and mixed it in, so the soil should be all prepped. If you don't want to compost a full bed like this, you could just dig the trenches and add a little bit of compost before you plant the potatoes, just so they have a little bit of extra nutrients, but in our case, we should be good to go. Potatoes are all set. Typically I would water them, but it's been quite rainy over the last few weeks and we're supposed to get more rain over the next few days. So I'm just going to keep an eye on the weather. If it gets a little bit dry, then I'll come out here and hand water them. But I don't want them to get waterlogged because if they are, then they'll just rot and we won't actually get potatoes. So we'll keep an eye on things. I still need to figure out irrigation for this back bed. I just haven't even gotten there yet. So for now, we'll probably be hand watering, but once we get everything planted, I'm going to have to figure out a more permanent solution because hand watering is going to be a big job. So more to come on that, but for now, potatoes are done. The next bed I'm starting to add plants to is one of the raised beds that's next to the driveway. Last year I planted a bunch of like mixed flowers in this bed, and then the one next to it I used for dahlias. I think I'm going to do the same thing this year because I loved the look of it. It just got very full and wild, and I planted cosmos and zinnias here, which just kept blooming all season long. So it just added a lot of color here during the summer months. I planted a variety of cosmos, snapdragon, stock, and zinnia from seed. So I just plucked a handful of each out of the cell packs, and I'm going to stick those in this bed. The rest of them are going to go in the back garden where we have a lot more space, because I want to see how flowers do back there this year to kind of experiment and see how we might expand gardens in the future. As they start growing, I'm going to need to come back in here and add some twine around the stakes I have in the ground, just so they have support. The zinnias and the cosmos get very tall, so if they're too tall and they don't have support, they'll just fall over and break when it's windy. So we have a little bit of time, but I will need to come and do that to all of the beds where I'm growing tall flowers. The bed has already been composted, and there are a couple of small rogue cosmos, and I think zinnias are stock growing from seed that must have dropped last year. So I'm just kind of leaving those as is to see what happens. I also planted some daffodil bulbs in the fall, so that's what these green stalks are. So I'm just going to leave those because those will eventually kind of die off and the flowers will fill in. First bed of flowers is completely planted. Yay, so exciting. I'm gonna come back to the second bed for the dahlias a little bit later on, but I'm now at the back garden bed because I want to plant the rest of the flower seedlings back here. A few weeks ago, Matt and I installed all of these stakes on this far side of the garden to create like 2 rows for flowers to grow in. Now, these will be reserved for the taller flowers because those are the ones that need support. So some of the shorter flowers can go to the side here because we're definitely going to run out of room. And I was hoping for one of these rows to be all dahlias, and like in the front raised bed, I will add some twine around these stakes just to give them something to lean against when they get really tall. This middle column is kind of like a walkway, so we can easily get to the flowers on both sides and harvest them. I've got a mix of snapdragons, stock, cosmos, celosia, clarkia, eucalyptus, sweet annie, zinnias, and a different variety of cosmos. So most of those I will be planting in this second row here, and then some of the shorter ones I will plant to the side. I'm hoping I have enough room to like cram it in. I would love for this to just be like filled with flowers later in the season, but this is my first year planting flowers back here, so it's really going to be an experiment. Good morning, happy Saturday. It is the long Memorial Day weekend. A little bit rainy, we just had a big downpour, but I think we are now in the clear for the rest of the day. I am in the raised bed garden because we're going to start planting all of our seedlings here first. I only got through about 2 rows of flowers yesterday in the back bed, so we still have plenty more we need to plant there. And I have vastly underestimated the amount of space I had back there. So we are going to have to get a little bit clever with where we put things because particularly the squash, pumpkins, zucchini, like all of that stuff is just not going to have enough room back in that back bed. So I think we're going to fill up a couple of containers and spread those around, try to like use as much vertical space as we can, and see how many things we can squeeze in. Matt has generously offered to help me get everything in the ground just to kind of speed things up. So we are going to start over here in the raised bed garden. I'm going to start popping everything out of the cell packs and just kind of like laying it where I want to put it. And then we'll both go around and just drop everything in the ground and cover it up. The time consuming part is just figuring out where I want to put everything. I kind of have a plan, but as always, I'll probably pivot a little bit. So we've got a lot to get through, but with Matt's help, I think we'll be able to get through it relatively quickly. And hopefully by the end of today, we'll have a garden filled with new baby plants. Whose idea was it to plant this many plants? Every time I think that we're getting close to being done, I look over to that table and I swear there's the same amount of seedlings. But looking at the beds, we have made a lot of progress, which is very exciting. So far, we have most of the veggies planted in the raised beds, and then we planted almost all the flowers, and then as many squash and pumpkins as we could fit in the back beds. So we're in pretty good shape. I still have a handful of perennials that need to be planted, but I think I'm going to save those for tomorrow because I'm getting a little bit tired. But before we wrap up for today, we are going to repot our Japanese maple tree because the pot didn't really stand up well over the winter, which is such a shame because I really liked this planter, but it froze and cracked. So we need to remove this tree, and we are going to put it in this new plastic planter, which is supposed to look like a terracotta-ish pot. And as much as I'm not a huge fan of plastic, it just holds up way better in the winters here, and big planters are just expensive as it is, so the last thing I want to do is replace them every year. So I'm hoping this one will hold up a little bit better, but as you can see, there's quite a bit of water in the bottom, so we need to flip it over and drill some holes in the bottom so that it has drainage before we actually put some compost and soil and the tree in there. You guys, the sun is shining. I'm so happy. The rain has passed. We are getting ready for day 2 of Memorial Day weekend. Gardening, planting, composting, all the things. Matt is currently outside blowing all of the leaves out of the front garden so we have a clean slate to throw compost onto. There are tons of plants that have already started popping up, but we're just gonna kind of compost around that. And then we have that front row of alliums and hydrangeas where I'd like to lay some cardboard down to kill some grass and then throw compost on top of that. The cardboard basically acts as a weed barrier. When I put those hydrangeas and allium bulbs in, I never actually removed all the grass. I kind of did it the lazy way and just dug a hole, stuck them in, and called it a day. But now it's really hard to like mow around the plants because they're so close together and the grass just grows really tall in between them. So you kind of have to be careful when you're weed whacking and mowing and just like try to avoid the plants as best as possible. So I'm trying to make our lives a little bit easier, and I think just like composting as much as we can where the plants are, we'll just minimize like weeds and mowing, and then we just have that strip of grass in the front that we'll have to mow. Now, I've thought about turning the whole front section into a garden, but the grass actually kind of like helps keep all that soil in place, and it's a pretty like steep slope into the road, and I think if we remove that, we'll have a lot more issues with like erosion over time. So as much as I would like to get rid of the grass altogether, I think having that strip in the front will just kind of help keep things in place a little more. Once Matt's done blowing, we're gonna back the truck up, which is currently loaded with compost, and just start shoveling that in. It should go relatively quickly with 2 people, at least I'm hoping. The last time I did it myself while he was tilling the, clearing in the back, and I got tired pretty quickly. So I'm very grateful to have his help today. We finished composting the front beds. We did the bed in front of the rock wall with all of the alliums, and then the bed on top of the rock wall with all of the perennials, and they look so good. We used the entire truckload of compost for just this area, and I actually think next year I want to extend the front perennial bed a little bit further, just because it sort of stops at like a weird end point, and I think it would just look nicer to continue it all the way to the lilac bushes we have behind me. The bed kind of stops here in line with the concrete, but I think we've been talking about maybe getting another load of compost, and if we do, I might just kind of like curve the bed over here and finish it off, because this is just a very jarring stop. You can see a little better from this angle, but these are like our lilac bushes, and then this is where the bed has always ended. I haven't really planted anything here because often in the fall we use this ledge to like blow leaves off of and things, because this space over here where it kind of like leads into, it's just like a dead end. So we kind of have to like blow everything out and over the rock wall. We could do something else as well. Like we could add stones, we could add like a footpath. I don't know, but it just feels weird to have this end. As you can see, my wheels are still turning. They're just never done. But this was a good reminder that composting takes a lot of effort. It takes a decent amount of time. And that truckload was our third one for the year. So the more beds we add, the bigger we make the beds, the more kind of maintenance we have to do each year. And as much as I want a house filled with gardens, filled with flowers, all the things, it just, I do want to kind of keep things manageable, if that makes sense. So lots to think about. My alarm was going off to remind me that I need to go hop in the shower. So we are going to be done for today. We actually did have time to mow the whole lawn, weed whack, and water the back garden. So we did get a few other things done, which was great. I still need to fill these planters, and I have to fill my hanging baskets. So still have a few small things, which is why we were thinking about getting another load of compost, and anything we don't use from that load we can throw into the grass and hopefully give that a little bit of love. But everything's coming together, which is very exciting. And now it's just time to nurture the plants and enjoy them. Hi. Come on, let's go to the garden. All right, you guys, that concludes the Memorial Day planting weekend. We got like 90% of our plants in the ground, and if I'm being honest with you, it's a week and a half later and I had to put the camera down because I was so tired of planting and doing all the things, and I just needed to recover. So I was initially thinking I would give you a little tour at the end here, but I think I'm just going to record a separate video. We'll do a whole tour of all the garden beds, what we planted, where we planted everything, including a few things that I didn't share with you, like I potted up some Boston ferns in the hanging baskets on the porch. So we'll just dedicate a whole video to a tour, and that way we have something to look back on later in the season to kind of compare and see how things did. These flipping flies are driving me nuts. Oh my gosh, they're like swarming my head. If anyone has any tips on keeping them away, let me know. Oh, anyway, don't mind me just flailing my arms over here. If you have any questions on what we planted, where we planted things, our garden spaces, any of that, drop a comment below. Let me know what you are planting in your own gardens this summer. I love to hear from you, and I love connecting in the comments. If you liked the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, click the bell notification if you want to be notified for future uploads, and share it with a friend if you think it's something they'd like. And I will catch up with you in the next video. Hopefully not with these flies.